form. Well, you're talking about whether this is not a blanket form. This is the coverage amendment endorses coverage O&P for faithful performance of duty required, yes. And of course, when we do the form itself, we're not doing, we're strictly covering it on under the claim part of it, and we're strictly covering where this micro. Because this form says application for commercial crime policy for government entities. Well, you got to remember this form here is what we call an ISO form, which is put out by the insurance industry, which is used in all bonds. And it comes out, and of course it states, it starts out common public conditions, talks about cancellation, then it talks about crime general provisions, loss sustained form. Well, it talks about what they aren't going to cover here, loss sustained, and then they go back in here and say, okay, you're going under the government entity, and this is what.
Show me the government entity section. I'd like to read it quick.
Well, it talks about what was A, that started added back in. Thought it was just in here. Okay, public employee dishonesty coverage form. That's the public employee. That's the one there. You're going to general, and then you're going because it's a governmental entity, and then it talks about adding back in and everything. And this is the general form that's used by any company on employee dishonesty. An ISO form.
So what you're saying is bond covers public dishonesty?
Covers, yeah, public employee dishonesty is what it's covering. So that if you covered, they asked us for a list. We had the sheriff department, we're using 30 employees, so that any employee is covered for dishonesty up to $50,000, as long as they're, they're saying on the job or out of the office. Like if they take money, we're listing the courthouse here, but if they take money, the sheriff arrests somebody in Holy Boat or somewhere else, they're saying they're covered also if they're off premises.
While temporarily outside the territory.
Yeah.
Specified in territory.
Well, even if they go to Des Moines for some reason.
Beyond the 50,000, do we have any coverage through our liability?
No. This is dishonesty. Depends on what they, no, you don't have anything.
So
that's why the bond. That's why they're bonded.
$1 million, we're only covered up to 50,000.
Well, they're covered.
We're covered for 20 right now.
I mean, well, he's proposing.
Yeah, covered 50 and 50, 100,000 already. But with your check and balances for your department, I think basically what you're talking about is somebody taking money and not approved checks. Like Chip and I were just talking about somebody in Iowa City that the gal was taking every 1 or 10 checks and throwing it into their checking accounts, and of course because they had no way of auditing and following up, well, at different counts. Well, here you've got a lot of checks and balances, money coming in. It's got to be, the cash-up's got to be there each time, and your checks. So I don't know how money would get stolen then, unless it was money like, especially the sheriff's department, or if you had somebody like at school districts. It's easy there because they've got so many different funds. This class has got funds, and they stole from the Parent Teachers Association in Des Moines, and it was easy to get $100,000 out of the school district there because they had nobody to follow up or nobody to knowing money come in.
There's section C here, bonded employee, loss caused by employee, required by law to be individually bonded. So how many by law are required to be individually bonded in this entity?
I think just the treasurer is the only one by law.
So they're excluding the treasurer's office with this right here then?
No, this is what
loss caused by employee required by law to be individually bonded. So if you're individually bonded, they're not going to pay, correct?
This is under the bond. This is what we're doing. We're doing a crime bond here, and she's bonded.
So that means any other bond then? C, bonded employee, loss caused by employee required by law to be individually bonded.
And I don't know whether the state, well, the state requires you to have a crime bond on the employee, up to 50,000 crime bond, but whether a fidelity bond, that I don't know. This isn't called a fidelity bond.
Didn't we always used to carry a fidelity bond on everybody?
That's what this is, a fidelity. They call it crime, but this is called, they call it fidelity or crime bond. This is the same thing.
So what, I always remembered that being a bigger number on.
Same number we always had. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't change numbers. Numbers were never changed. State says you gotta have a, it's called a crime or fidelity bond. They call it different. You know.
And a blanket bond covers,
This ain't a blanket though. This is per employee. You can have a blanket bond. But this bond was always set up, and it says it here when we check it off, that coverage form P, public employee dishonesty per employee, 20,000. Now you can have public employee dishonesty per loss and do a blanket bond. It's a different thing.
What are you better off with? Wouldn't you be better off to have a blanket bond in that then you wouldn't have to be individualized? I mean, if you had a blanket bond to cover the entity,
Yeah,
and you have a
well, it depends on what you blanket it. If you blanket 100,000,
well,
the thing is, if we list here, coverage amendment, endorsement, coverage forms O and P. We got to make sure that we're covered, that the county, that you've got one person that needs, the county treasurer needs to be covered in excess over and above whatever the blanket is. And you don't, then if you don't amend it, then she's covered underneath the blanket. What they call faithful performance of duty, yes, and then we do an excess of, well, we've been doing excess of 30,000 over the employees, but you can do excess of whatever you want for the treasurer. You can do a blanket bond and then have the...
well, I'm really comfortable with our checks and balances, and we have good people. I mean,
that's fine.
That doesn't concern me. I just when I looked at this and read the first section, I didn't see what they were
covering. I understand that.
I could not decipher. With those things brought back in, and with the state requirement, I mean, you have to have it. So then it goes to what level do you want to have?
And you could do a blanket bond, yeah. You could do, I don't know what the cost of a blanket bond, how they would look at it. They've always told me, because we're doing per employee and they know how many employees, if you do a blanket bond, it covers everybody. You don't go by employees. So I say, okay, we've got 85 employees in the county.
Oh, so you'd be clear out, it would go well beyond.
Oh yeah, you're blanketing on everybody.
That's it.
Yeah, they count everybody instead of going 30 plus the township clerks is what we did. And then the treasurer was over and above that. So I would assume that it would be higher. I definitely would. And I'm sure that's why over the time, to raise it to like to 50,000 and have 50,000 on the treasurer at 100,000 is going to cost you around $1,506 each. You're paying $847 now, so it'd be another $700 to raise it 50,000 employees, which would cover township clerks, everybody. I think we list the only ones we only list one person in each office. We don't list the list that I had from before. Here was
So is the office covered then if an employee at the office rather than the listed has a problem?
Well, they're just listing, yeah, they're just listing, like attorney office, we only put down Earl Parsons. We put Jim down as the listed person in that office.
So what about the rest of the employees in the office? Are they going to be covered or not?
They're only covered, no. You've got employees covered. Now, Vicky's office, everybody was listed, all 8 employees.
The reason I ask is you can look at that in two ways. Say the auditor's office, for example, he's responsible for the office.
That's right. That's why we've always listed.
And so that's how so if you do have a problem in the office, it becomes the auditor's problem automatically.
Right.
So that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.